Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cool Soul Creativity. It's Naven here, and I'm super excited for my guest today, Dawn Mazzone. We're going to have a really great conversation. We have some varied topics, and they're all really interesting. So I can't wait to get into our discussion, Dawn. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
I also want to remind everyone that the live chat is up. So if you have a comment or question, please post it and I will make sure that we get to it. So, with all that said, let's get right into our conversation, Dawn. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit, because as you know, creativity is so important to me. And I feel like it's so important to all of us, but we get taken away from it so much. And so you and I were talking before about the importance of getting adults back into that sense of creativity. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little about that topic.
Sure, sure. Well, as you referred to, we've been socialized into a linear conformity, you know, and that was just my mouse dropping. And we see where it's brought us into the world today. We see what that has done. So we've had specialization take over curiosity. And in doing so, ego and judgment and opinions reign rather than collaboration and a celebration of what each person's gifts are to the whole. So, creative endeavors are a way to open ourselves to this less aggressive place. It's more of a curiosity and experimenting with paint or colors and music and instruments, building, cooking, all sorts of creative endeavors opens our own lives and is a step toward healing the whole. So, for instance, we can pose the question, what do I do now when someone feels like they're in a stuck place or that they're just on a drudgery treadmill? And write an answer on a large sheet of paper with your non dominant hand. Answer it with your non dominant hand. You'll be amazed at the process and what you reveal to yourself. Um, of course, it'll feel awkward and odd because it's your non-dominant hand, and you may be using a marker instead of typing on the computer. But let that be the part of the fun. You know, we attribute play to children, and it's time adults play. So somebody I'd like to refer is Leonard Schlein wrote a book, The Alphabet and the Goddess. And he was actually a brain surgeon and was intrigued with the
Wow.
fact that so many of what we call prehistory prehistory cultures celebrated women, and yet something shifted. And he moved to he discovered that when the cultures moved toward reading and writing and focusing our eyes in a linear way, it became more of those energies that are more um, direct, aggressive, um, uh, less fluid and flowing, and less what people would attribute to feminine qualities.
Mhm.
Um, And I think it's time we get back into drawing spirals and dancing in spiral and weaving and whirling. And I think it'll be better for ourselves and for the world.
As you were talking about the differences in how that, how it affects the brain, I was thinking or wondering if that was also true if you're more linear, if it adds to competition more.
Oh, I think so. I
Because
think
it seems to me like you're rushing to that end point in when you think of it that way, instead of kind of being in that dreamy. dreamy state. You were talking about writing or drawing with a non-dominant hand. I can't tell you the trouble. I must have, had that drummed into me or something. I mean, my handwriting isn't that great to begin with, and when I use my non-dominant hand, and I should practice it more because it is kind of amazing, not, you know, just kind of shocking what it ends up looking like, and the difference.
Right. And I think asking a question uh, to yourself when you use your non-dominant hand, and just let it write something to you, you know?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily about trying to draw with it, because there is a certain skill involved in trying to mimic the outside world and put it onto paper in a
Mhm.
three-dimensional way. But just in terms of a um, uplifting message to yourself, we sometimes have our head going in circles, saying the same thing over and over again.
Mhm.
When you do this practice with the non-dominant hand, just be open to what it wants to tell you. So it gets out of that habitual way of thinking. And I think that's part of play and part of our natural inclination as human beings to really want to do.
So I think that was what we were saying before. Let yourself feel awkward
Mm,
with that, which is important because
yeah.
even in art class, so often we still have to conform. And so I think that's really like an important part. Go ahead and feel awkward or uncomfortable with it. And you were talking about it taking us to a different part of the brain. And I also think of it taking us, to our inner self or higher self. It's also another way to almost meditate
Yes.
with, by bypassing, just
Yes.
like you said, by bypassing that loop that's running in our heads all the time.
Yes. Well, and
Yeah.
even just taking different colors and just, doodling basically with your non-dominant hand. Just, not with any evaluation of what you're creating. Just let it go. And then
Mhm.
look at it and say, whoa, what happened here? Just see what message might be there.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're using your non-dominant hand, it kind of gives you permission because you're not expecting to have perfection. So you can kind of bypass that whole train of thought. I
Right.
think
And it
that's a
helps
really good
us to
idea.
it helps us get out of that habitual evaluation of ourselves, by doing that
Hmm.
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we definitely need to do from time to time.
Hmm.
Can you talk about? I know you have mentioned, and I'm interested in exactly what it means. Is a holistic earth-based economy.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, our current economic system is based on growth and more growth and more growth and more growth. And that's, also related to the consume, consume, consume that we do on
Hmm.
an individual basis. But nature knows when to stop. There's it stops and then things change and it can be declared complete. For instance, a seashell is formed by the living organism giving off ions that attract the calcification layers that form the shell. Well, at some point, there's an innate intelligence of nature that knows when the shell is at the perfect size. And our current economy has lost that innate intelligence. So as a spokesperson for a holistic society to work for everyone, we must bring forth our human innate intelligence. Um, there's a book I read called Cradle to Cradle, and it's by William McDonough. And the byline of the book, Cradle to Cradle, is remaking the way we make things. So cradle to cradle is a phrase in opposition to the cradle to grave. Well, we all know that there really is no away when we throw something away. We
Mhm.
all are on this planet together, the human species. So, um, another example I love to give is that there are termites in Africa who build these amazing abodes that are always at a particular temperature, no matter how cold it is in the night of the desert or how warm it is in the heat of the desert. And they know how to do this. It's a natural knowing, and they just it's a collaborative natural knowing, and they create the perfect abode for themselves. So those are things that nature does that we could, we could learn from. And there's
Mhm.
actually an organization, and it's a science basically of called biomimicry, where we can look at nature and say, well, what can we learn here? The way we do it in our current economic system is heat, beat, and treat, and then throw away. You know, and there's other nature can lead us into a different way of creating our material world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting and a very cool way to look at it. As you were talking about that, I was thinking, nature and having that different perspective can change or open the door for us to change the way we think about progress
Yes.
and success, because progress is that just grow, grow, grow. I know in my area, and I'm sure this is common, there were office buildings or retail spaces created, and then someone starts, could just be down the road,
Yes.
another little, shopping area or another office complex. And so everybody, that's the new one. So everybody picks up and moves to that one. And we have a lot of those empty buildings sitting around. And it just seems so wasteful
Mm-hmm.
and so unattractive.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a better way, but I'm sure everyone was thinking, well, this is progress. We're going
Right.
to move.
The
Um,
newest, the biggest, the greatest.
mhm.
There is.
And also, it could be thought to, what can we do with these? How can we repurpose these buildings into something that might serve everyone
Mm-hmm.
instead of just how can we use this to make the most money?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and it's not that you can't make money.
Money. Right.
It's just that that's not the main focus, but it's not
Right.
asking people to, you
I have a wonderful quote from Donella Meadows that explains this. Can I read it?
yeah, please.
Okay. Um, she said, economics says, worry, struggle, be dissatisfied. The permanent condition of humankind is scarcity. The only way out of scarcity is to accumulate and hoard, though that means, regrettably, that others will have less. Too bad, but there is not enough to go around. The earth says, you have been born into a world of self maintaining abundance and incredible beauty. Feel it, taste it, be amazed by it. If you stop your struggle and lift your eyes long enough to see Earth's wonders, to play and dance with the glories around you, you will discover what you really need. It isn't that much. There is enough. As long as you control your numbers, there will be enough for everyone and for as long as you can imagine. Isn't that lovely? And doesn't that
That's a
just say
really,
it
yeah.
all? It says it all. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It's a very nice quote
Yeah.
and a nice perspective. If we can move
Yeah.
in that direction, it would
Yeah.
be a plus. I know that you are also interested in sound
Mm-hmm.
and using sound to bring us together or create wholeness. And I know that sound, there's more and more studies coming out all the time about what you can use sound for and the benefits of sound. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we are vibrational beings, and the energizing spirit of life runs through us. Our voice speaks in a series of sounds put together to form words. And we've all used our voice to say, "Oh, what a sweet baby," or "Isn't that delicious?" So we use sounds. Um, but we haven't. I think it takes a conscious effort to really celebrate those sounds that come from us and that are unique to us. So, in the cacophony of life and its distractions and its noise and its complexity, we can easily forget the subtle energies in our own bodies. And focusing on our own tones inside us can bring us to be more present in the moment. It can assist us in integrating our heart and mind and soul to be in harmony and with each other. This assists our health and the health of everything around us. Um, there are sounds that are designated to different chakras from different, traditions. But I say your own personal voice and tone at any given time is really the true gift. And if you practice listening to your own tones, you will move into loving them and appreciating yourself more fully.
That reminds me that we could be using those tones to raise our vibrations with everything that you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that you would agree that's a good way
To do that,
to
yes.
do that. Yeah.
For sure. For
And
sure.
an easy way because you have the tools that you need right with you.
Oh, exactly. There's no you know, schlepping around a piano. you know. So
I think that we were talking a little bit about this, but I wanted to get your thoughts on interbeing, and maybe we've covered a little bit of that so far, but I'm interested in what you have to say.
mm-hmm. Well, it's a term that was coined by the great Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, and sometimes we talk about we're beings, but we're really inter beings. We're all connected. We are connected to each other, and we're connected to what's around us. Um, so none of us, exists independently as much as the American mentality is my independence. We really are connected intimately, and everything relies on everything else to manifest. So um, I've created some interbeing practices at times and asked people, all right, where did your shoe come from? And somebody might say, oh, well, I went to the store 2 months ago, or my sister gave them to me. But okay, where's the leather from? What animal? Was the animal honored? How many hands had to touch that leather to be molded, created, shaped, and then transported to get to you, to get on your foot? That's inner being. There's like a web of connections.
Mhm.
And it's an epiphany for a lot of people to start thinking of that. I've done that in circles where you didn't bring anything special, but where did this pen come from? Where did your shoes come from? So I think it's a beautiful practice to realize we're all part of the whole, and everything that we touch is part of the connection.
Right. In the case of the shoe, you just stop and think how many hands had a part in creating that item and then transporting it,
Yep.
staging
Designing
it.
it, designing it to begin with, it's really
There could be a lot of steps too removed from the actual end product or the person that ends up with it, from all the steps that it went through. So it is an interesting practice
mm-hmm.
to stop and do that with some of the items.
Yeah,
Of course, we can do it with food, who
absolutely.
grew it, who picked it, who
Absolutely.
transported it, same thing.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering if you can talk about I love this term, planetary poetics, and within that, creating joy and honoring each person, which I think if you're talking about putting that with interbeing, you've already explained a little bit about,
Mm-hmm.
honoring other people.
Well, planetary poetics is an ancient practice that can bring us back into harmony with the planet. Um, it's for healing, for it's an open eye meditation, first of all. And usually meditation, people think of what can I do? What can that do for me? This planetary poetics is what can we do for the planet? So it uses sound, it uses a visualization, and it uses a hand posture. And it's beautiful in its simplicity and ease. Anybody can do it. But it's about sending our focus and energy and attention out into the planet. And it's an ancient practice. The mystical mystery schools used to do it. Um, and I love the word poetics because it refers to that kind of ancient wisdom and universal laws and principles that shape the spiral of the interbeing that we are in ourselves and in the planet. Yeah.
I really like that wording too. And I like that you mentioned it was part of mystery
Mm,
mystery schools because I really like to play in that area of mystery.
mm,
And of course, for creating, that's really, a key element. You can get into the mystery, then the imagination and wonder, and then the creativity as it, kind of jump starts it. I know that you have in the past have done a project with a friend called Catch a Dream, uh, and it's for children. They're kind of a wide audience, though, with the children. And you did a book and a movie, which is very interesting. I love, you know, so many creative makers going across all these different areas of creativity. So, can
mm.
you talk a little bit? If you have it there, you can show us
Yeah,
and
I
talk
can
a little
show
bit
it.
about.
It's called Catch a Dreamer, Celebrating the Rights of the Child. So it really is a celebration of the 10 universal rights of the child. And excuse me. Yeah, I guess you can see it a little
Yeah,
bit
we can see
there.
it.
um, but it was inspired by the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Child from 50 years ago. From 50 years ago. My friend Helen Weber, who has now passed, she created the book, and we have been meeting for a year about bringing sustainable ideas and practices out into the world in a bigger way. And she said, well, maybe we can do something with this book, that I haven't done anything with, but it's a beautiful book. I'm like, that's it. So we created a movie about child heroes who have done something about the crises in our world. Everything from, um, getting water, to places that have to walk 10 miles a day to get water, to restoring health, to, the right to enjoy life without neglect, cruelty, and exploitation. All these beautiful, um, really moral code for all children that they should have what they need to have a thriving life. And so, we found child heroes that have done miraculous things, and that's what our movie is about.
That's really cool. So the points that you were making, are they right from the code, from the
Yeah,
United Nations code?
yes. From 50 years ago, you have to understand it was done quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So, catch a dreamer, the right to be cherished and protected, the right to affection, love, and understanding, the right to enjoy life without neglect, cruelty, and exploitation. She did take it into a poetic analysis. The United Nations didn't use these words
Mm-hmm.
per se, but she looked at each one and put it into a poetic statement. Okay. The right to the best nutrition and medical care, the right to special care if physically or mentally challenged, the right to a name and to a place in a nation that cares, the right to be useful member of society and to develop special abilities, the right to a free education for all children, the right to live in a world of peace and universal brotherhood, the right to enjoy these rights regardless of race, gender, national, or social origin. So the world still has a way to go to live
Yeah,
up to these rights,
we
but
can definitely
we
do
need
some
to
work.
put it in, we need to have it in the forefront of our thoughts.
Do you know if the
Action.
United Nations still has that list, or do they still have children code of rights, and have they
It
updated
has
it? Do you know?
transformed a number of times. Right now, I think they're focused on the Sustainable Development Goals.
Hmm.
That's the universal conversation. Um, and obviously those sustainable universal rights, there's an overlap between these rights for children and
Hmm.
what's being stated today. So, yeah.
Well, that was a really wonderful creative project.
It was
It
great
must have been
fun.
a lot of fun to do.
And we got it out to a number of, we did collages with children, and we did some with even college students, but mostly it's geared for maybe age 9 to through high school. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
Cool. And it's nice that you were doing a creative collaboration.
it
Another
was.
thing that I really love. I wanted to mention to everyone that I did, under the video, they can find a link to your website.
Oh, thank you.
And is that the best way to contact you, Dawn, if anyone wanted to reach out?
Yeah, that's a very good way. I can
Okay, so yeah, that is under the video if anyone does want to reach out.
great.
And I want to thank you so much. That was a really good conversation. And I love, that weaving of creativity through all these different elements, in nature, and interbeing and going within. All of that is so important. So I do want to thank you, and I hope you will come back and talk to us again at some
Oh,
point in time.
thank you, David. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, and for anyone watching, I always say this every week too, but a little housekeeping. If you're watching after the fact, please feel free to leave Dawn a comment or a question, and I will make sure that she sees it. Because a lot of times someone's watching down the road and they didn't get the chance to comment live. So,
Thank you,
all
David.
right. And I want to mention next week, I have another really exciting guest, Maureen Kellen Taylor. And Maureen is also an artist and just into all kind of wonderful transformative projects. So looking forward to talking to Maureen next week. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks, Dawn. I appreciate you joining us so much. And I will see everyone next week. Bye.
Bye.